It's been reported that the snipers,
Boy, my cheeks are red.
government snipers,
Good heavens.
saw him on the roof
Oops.
20 minutes before.
Yeah, Joanne, everything you need is in that left sliding drawer.
Okay.
Okay, just slide that out and whatever you need is in there, okay? So if you are watching us on YouTube, thank you. We have ladies in house and ladies on Zoom, and we are actually prayed ourselves in. We're celebrating a couple of birthdays for Jane and Melinda. It's so cool. Love to celebrate. And we are doing 1 Chronicles 11 through 16. Right there.
This? Up on the wall. That's what I did too.
And Psalms 75 and 76. So I read the Psalms, definitely studied the Psalms 75 and 76. A lot of remembering that the Lord is judge, and I think about whatever's, all the stuff that's going on in the world and all the things that we're seeing, with the what do you call it, the Olympics and all that, and just remembering that God is judge. He will judge. There's no question about that. And it's sad that so many will be so
It's disgusting.
blown away. Well, it's sad that so many are just unsaved and deceived in our days and time. We're headed towards Ezekiel 38 and 39 when it comes to Israel, all the nations that are together. Iran last week before last, shot into Israel.
Yeah, that was terrible.
For the first time, and Iran in our Bible, when we read, Iran is Persia, and when you read about Persia and everything that is that Persia wants to do, they want to annihilate Israel, and but the fact that Iran, Persia sent rockets directly into Israel for the first time is
Into a
so
children's playground.
Well, those kids that were killed yesterday,
Yeah.
that was
12 kids. Hezbollah, and they ran back to them.
Yeah,
It was,
but-
it was
but
a
Iran
random
is-
missile.
Yeah.
Iran's behind it.
Iran themselves
Killed 12 children.
shot off rockets for the first time, they themselves, into Israel, and that is usually not what happens.
people all
So,
over the world now that seem to be backing, the so-called Palestinians, and they're.
well, remember the whole
they're
world,
mad
for
at
this to happen, the
Israel.
whole world has to be against
Yes,
Israel.
I know. So, you can see that forming.
Yeah,
You can see
yeah,
how they-
absolutely. So we are in exciting times. We are in kind of scary times,
Yeah.
exciting times, but definitely in end times. And so as we study, even in Chronicles, as we study the Lord, who He is, what He's done, what He says, what an amazing God. What an amazing God. And
Garbage. Tall cabinet. At least she knew the tall cabinet.
I'm definitely a downstairs person. You don't want to bring me up.
I wonder if it's because she's far away from the router and the modem.
Mine is freezing also.
can you not hear me?
Yeah, but you keep freezing.
You're in and out.
Oh,
Yeah.
no.
In and out.
Oh, no freezing allowed. I'm sorry. Shouldn't be. I don't know why.
Maybe because you're farther away from the modem
Uh,
and router.
It comes back, Trish, so just go ahead.
It's in my hand. The modem's in my hand.
That's a mouse.
Mouse is in my hand. The modem's, the computer's right in front of me. I can touch you.
No,
So it shouldn't be.
we're gonna get about every fifth word.
Oh, no. Rats.
It's amazing.
Lord,
that
we just
don't
lift up
bring
the internet to you right
that's
now.
what's
Lord,
weird.
we lift
That
up the
is the-
Zoom and
that
the
is the weird
internet.
part.
Father, would you just bless that? Lord, would your hand just be on it right
Well.
now, Father, as we try to work out, all these technical kinks all the time, Lord, but you're more powerful. You have your hand.
Oh, here we
Okay.
go.
Looks like it rebooted.
Well, I
itself.
prayed that. It kind of redid, something. So,
Looks like a reboot.
Okay.
yeah. Oh, and there's Colleen. And so, yeah, let me
Good
let
job.
me get.
Definitely better.
Okay, let's try this again. So remember, when you ladies are talking, they can't hear
Right.
because I don't have my microphones up here. So.
Or your bell. Ding, 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 ding.
Or my bell. So we want to be, letting them see, and hopefully this is all, it rebooted itself, so hopefully it's going to just do its own thing.
Good.
So we're in First Chronicles, chapter 11. And it says that all Israel came together to David at Hebron and said, "We're your bone and your flesh. Even when Saul was king, you were the one who led Israel out and brought them in. The Lord your God said to you, you shall shepherd my people Israel and be ruler over my people Israel." Verse 3, therefore, the elders of Israel came to the king at Hebron, and David made a covenant with them before the Lord. They anointed David king over Israel according to the word of the Lord by Samuel. So before this, only one of the tribes had recognized David as king. And the others, if you remember, we're going down memory lane,
11.
had Ishbosheth, easy for you, which was one of Saul's sons as king.
I'm impressed because you could say that without looking at the word, and you can even read.
Ishbosheth, Mephibosheth and Ishbosheth, yeah. But Ishbosheth was murdered, and so now they're all turning to David. And David, had already displayed his ability to lead them. They knew that God had called him, and so they're now ready. And remember, David wasn't going to make himself king. A lot like Jesus, wasn't going to make himself king until they asked him. And it was a reflection of Jesus. And verse 4, chapter 11, David and all Israel went to Jerusalem, which is Jabesh, where the Jebusites were, and the inhabitants of the land. The inhabitants of Jabesh said to David, "You shall not come in here." Nevertheless, David took the stronghold of Zion, and David said, "Whoever attacks the Jebusites first shall be chief and captain." And Joab went up first, became chief. Verse 7, David dwelt in the stronghold, therefore, and called it the city of David. He built around it. Joab repaired the rest of the city. And verse 9, David went on and became great, and the Lord of hosts was with him. So that was some 400 years after God commanded to take Israel. After God commanded Israel to take the whole land, they are finally, doing it. This city was still a Canaanite city. It was still in the Jebusites' hands, and they hadn't taken it all. And this had been 400 years since God commanded them to do it. Took them a while, didn't it? It's like, but the Jebusites were very confident. It was a hard city to conquer because it was up on a hill. They could see all their enemies coming, and they had gotten very confident. But David conquered the city. Why? Because God was with him, of course. And Joab was his captain already, so it said, "You'll become chief and captain." He was already his captain, so he also becomes chief as well. And then Jerusalem, we know, became the capital where David lived. And Jerusalem became great because God said, "I'm going to put my name there." And that's why Jerusalem is Jerusalem today, because God put his name there. And then verse 10, These were the heads of the mighty men whom David had, who strengthened themselves with him to make him king according to the word of the Lord. So David was nothing without his mighty men. And you know that God had given those guys to him. They were ragtags when they came to him at the cave of Adullam. They were just a ragtag. But you know, God can use a leader to make you that person of God, and God can use you to make that leader a person of God. So it works both ways with the Lord. And verse 11, the number of the mighty men whom David had, he talks about Jeshobin, chief of the captains, had lifted up his spear against 300 that were killed by him. Eleazar, one of the three mighty men, he was with David at Pasdammim, and there were Philistines that were gathered for battle, and there was a piece of ground full of barley, and so the people fled from the Philistines, stationed themselves in the middle of that field, verse 14, defended it, killed the Philistines, so the Lord brought about a great victory. And so God mentions this guy, Jeshobin, killed 300, and he mentions Eleazar, who killed many Philistines. But it was the Lord that brought the victory, right? It's always the Lord that brings the victory. The Lord always brings the victory.
Are the Philistines do the Palestinians today come from the Philistines?
No.
No. Okay.
The Palestinians don't exist. There are no such thing as Palestinians. They call themselves Palestinians, but there's no such thing.
They're Arab.
They're Arabs. They are Arabs. Philistines were
They have no
completely
history.
wiped out in biblical times, so they don't come from the Philistines, and they come from nowhere, and they have no claim to any land, and that's why it cracks me up when they're all these stupid Americans are out there, yay for get freed Palestinians. I'm like, have you ever looked at a history book or read a Bible? Absolutely not.
People are very ignorant.
Oh, yeah.
And if it's to their advantage to be ignorant,
Well, they follow the crowd.
they just
Well, they
follow.
said
It's
yeah.
and it's not to your advantage to be ignorant anytime, but
Where did they come from?
they're Arabs that at some point in time somebody decided to call an area that they put some Arabs in Palestine. I forget who it was and why, but they called it an area. And it stuck. They just claimed it, and then they said it was theirs, and then they said that that's who they were, and that they belonged there, and this was their land, when that none of that was ever true.
They're like
And-
squatters.
Yeah, squatters, good. Yeah. But, people go along with this stuff, and they,
And even
Yeah.
fly the
So-
Palestinian flag
Yeah.
over here.
yeah. And yet there is no Palestinian flag, but, Verse 15, 3 of the 30 men went down to the rock to David, into the cave of Adullam. The army of the Philistines encamped in the valley of Rephaim. David was in the stronghold, and the garrison of the Philistines was then in Bethlehem. Verse 17, David said with longing, oh, that someone would give me a drink of water. We know the story. These guys broke through the camp of the Philistines. They drew water. They brought it back. David ended up pouring the water out in front of the Lord as an offering to the Lord because, he had asked for that just without thinking. He had asked for it more in his heart and a desire than he did in reality. And they risked their lives to go and do that for him. And he was like, I'm not worthy. David felt that he wasn't worthy to drink that water that these guys actually risked their lives to do because he didn't think. David didn't think. And it's as a leader, especially when you have people that admire you, I guess would be the word, you need to be very careful about what you ask for, because they go out and risk their life to produce that for you, and it's not anything he he really wanted, I mean, he was just, and just the fact that they did that was very sobering for David. Be careful what comes from your heart. And plus David was sitting there remembering what was, and had that moment instead of concentrating on what's happening right now. He was kicking back, kind of thinking of, oh, I remember when, and that got him in a bad place. So we always, especially we're in a battle every day. And you want to be in the battle. You don't want to be remembering, oh gosh, I remember when, because we're in a battle. And so the desires of the heart. But, go ahead. No, what?
I need to use the restroom.
Yeah, first door to your right.
I'm sorry, keep on.
In verse 20 through 25, Abishai, the brother of Joab, was chief of another 3. He had lifted up his spear against the 300 men, killed them, and won a name among these 3.
He killed 300 men
Abishai.
alone?
But not by himself.
Of the 3, he was more honored. He became their captain. However, he did not attain to the first 3, didn't do as much as they did. And then we have Benani, had killed 2 lion-like heroes of Moab. He also had gone down and killed a lion in the midst of a pit on a snowy day. Verse 23, he killed an Egyptian of great height, like, what's his name? Goliath, thank you. In the Egyptian's hand there was a spear like a weaver's beam. He went with a staff, wrested the spear out of the Egyptian's hand, and killed him. These things Benaniah did. He was more honored than the 30, but he did not attain to the first 3. And David appointed him over his guard. So Abishai was famous for his battle against 300, and Benani for his battle against both men and beasts. God is honoring these guys by mentioning them. They're being brave in the service of the Lord, right? They're being brave in the service of the Lord. That's why they're getting mentioned. Not because they were all that in a bag of chips, they were all Mr., but because they were warriors in the service of the Lord, and God is gracious. And he mentions them, and I always think if the Lord wrote a Bible today, if the Bible was written from then to, would we be in it? Would any one of us be in it? And what for and where? Doesn't that, hey, it could have been written in these days, not in those days, It wasn't, but that Christ came later or something, and here, but yeah, would we be in the Bible? Would God have written about us?
Graham probably would be.
Huh?
No, not Franklin.
Billy Graham.
Billy Graham.
Yeah.
Chuck Smith.
Yeah. Yeah, you think about
Dr.
those
Chuck
things.
Missler.
But there's, you see through, in the Bible, when we read, it's like you see the big guys, Moses and David and Elijah and Elisha, but you see a lot of other people too. A lot of people that we don't know. And even in the genealogies, God mentions them, and it's like interesting. I always think about that. Lord, would I have been a Deborah or a Esther or, I don't know.
Anybody but
Would I have stood up for the Lord? Just would you stand up, for the Lord?
Jezebel.
Oh my.
No,
Want
not
to come back
Jezebel.
as Jezebel?
Verse 26, it says the mighty warriors were Asahel, the brother of Joab, Elhanan. Verse 27, Shemoth, Helaz, Ira, Abizer, and 29, Sabakai. Anyway, these names all the way down. But we get to, this is the honor roll of David's mighty men. This is the foundation. These guys are the foundation of the reign of David. So, they met David at the cave of Adullam, and these guys were the ones that were all distressed and in debt and discouraged, and yet here they are. Blessed is the mighty, when you follow the Lord, when you let the Lord lead you, these guys let the Lord lead them. When you let the Lord lead you wherever you are.
Well,
You
number
sure-
41 is Uriah.
Well, that- yeah.
Is that the same Uriah that was married
Yeah.
to Bathsheba?
Yeah. 26, verse 26, Ahasiel was killed by Abner. I don't know if you remember that. There was a story about Abner killing 3 guys, and he was one of them. Remember, he turned around and told him, don't follow me, I don't want to kill you, and he wouldn't quit following him, and then he said, please go back. I'm a warrior, you're not, you're young, but he wouldn't listen, and he ended up killing him, and Uriah, verse 41, Uriah was the husband of Bathsheba, and he was a mighty man of David, and that's why it was so sad that of what happened. And then chapter 12, verses 1 and 2, these were the men who came to David at Ziklag while he was still a fugitive from Saul. He was in Philistine country, right? And they were among the mighty men, armed with bows, using the right and the left hand, hurling stones, shooting arrows. They were Benjamin, Saul's brethren. Yeah, interesting. So even the relatives of Saul came to David when David lived in the territory of the Philistines and he was trying to escape from Saul. These guys had much to gain too from Saul becoming king or remaining king and not David, but they chose David. They chose David because they knew God was with him, and they knew that when God's with you, you're gonna do the right thing. You're gonna be the leader. Smart guys. Like, I don't know, I try to think about now, it's like people that are running, and it's like, that if you know that God's with one, I don't know that, but if you do, that if you're going to be with that one, then they're going to win. They're going to do the right thing. They're going to be, the leader. And today, I don't know, we have an interesting,
You need anything?
I just need to put my foot up. It has to be, yeah. Not usually, but yeah, just the top foot. Thanks. There we go. Sorry. These guys had much to gain from Saul, and yet they were smart. They knew that God was with David, and so they're going to go with David. And then in 3 through 15, it talks about the chief guy, and then Joash, which we remember, Jeziel, Peleh. There's a lot of names in here too. Ishmael, a mighty man among the 30 and over the 30, and we have a lot of names. And verse 8, some Gadites joined David at the stronghold in the wilderness. They were men trained for battle who could handle a shield and a spear, and whose faces were like the faces of lions. I mean, they were set to do what they got to do. And they were as swift as gazelles. And then you have some other men, and then verse 14, these were from the sons of Gad. These guys up here, captains of the army. The least was over 100, and the greatest was over 1,000. These are the ones who crossed the Jordan in the first month, when it had overflowed its banks. They put to flight all those in the valleys to the east and to the west. So David's army was organized in groups, if you notice that, of about 30-ish. He's the one that started organizing the way we do it now, even, the army. They were trained, they were skilled with weapons, they were swift, they were ready to battle. And even when they went to cross the Jordan, it was overflowing its banks. I understand it gets pretty wild and pretty crazy. And that was pretty brave of them to do that when it was at that peak of time. And I'm going to need a plug in. But and then 16 through 22, some